Someone came here and is not a good person around this area of our president. We know
Burkina Faso's president is everywhere, on murals, and now in controversy. They called him Africa's savior, but now reports say the revolution might be a lie. Fake trains, fake reforms, a real war is getting worse. And behind it all, Russia's shadow, AI deepfakes, and vanishing journalists. So, who is Ibrahim Traore? A liberator, a puppet, or the most dangerous illusion in Africa? Let's find out. They told him to obey. He refused. They warned him about isolation. He built alliances. They sanctioned him. He built a refinery. Now, they're out of moves and out of their minds. In the last 2 weeks, Western media have launched a coordinated smear campaign against Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traore, the 37-year-old revolutionary president who's done the unthinkable: defy the West and survive. From the Financial Times to US intelligence memos, they're all calling him a cult leader, an AI myth, a proxy of Russia, because they've run out of ways to control him. But here's the real breaking news. Traoré isn't losing power. He's expanding it. On the ground, he's building Africa's first gold refinery in Burkina Faso, with a capacity of 400 kilograms per day, cutting France and Switzerland out of the loop. His transitional government just approved 50,000 free homes for the poor, the displaced, and the forgotten, without a cent from the IMF. And with the AES Confederation uniting Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, Traoré has helped forge a new African axis that refuses to bow to Paris, Brussels, or Washington. This isn't what the West expected, and that's exactly the problem. So now, they've gone into a full meltdown. They're accusing Traoré of being an internet fabrication. They say videos of his projects are too polished, that his speeches are too perfect, that people love him too quickly. They don't question what he's done. They question why people believe in him. That's how you know they're scared. Even ECOWAS, the once respected West African bloc now crumbling under French pressure, is scrambling. After Burkina Faso's exit, along with Mali and Niger, the organization has been reduced to threats and statements. But the AES didn't just leave. They imposed a confederal import levy, a 0.5% tax on ECOWAS goods to send a message: we're not coming back. And as Traoré's star rises, so does paranoia in Western capitals. Leaked French military memos now refer to Burkina Faso as an uncontrollable zone of influence, and US briefings call the AES Confederation a risk to regional stability, as if African sovereignty is a threat to peace. Here's the real threat: a young African leader who doesn't ask permission. He's not begging for loans. He's not hosting US bases. He's not flying to Paris for photo ops. He's putting African interests first and Western ones last. And for that, they've declared war, not with weapons, but with headlines, AI-generated lies, and accusations of Russian manipulation. Let's be honest, they don't hate Traoré because of who he is. They hate him because of what he proves. Africa doesn't need the West to rise. That dignity isn't something you buy, it's something you take back. And now the question is burning across the continent. Is this the fall of Western control over Africa, or just the beginning of a bigger rebellion? To answer that, we need to understand how a quiet young captain turned into the most wanted man in Western media. Let's pause for a second to say big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. Ibrahim Traore didn't ask for a spotlight. He took power in silence, with no PR campaign, no celebrity endorsements, no foreign advisors whispering in his ear. Just one mission: liberate Burkina Faso from foreign puppeteers and give it back to its people. And that act alone was enough to light a fire across the continent. In September 2022, he led a coup not just against Paul-Henri Damiba, but against the entire architecture of neo-colonial obedience. Damiba had promised change, but played France's game. Traoré said enough was enough. With soldiers at his side and no French handlers behind him, he stepped forward and declared a new direction, one rooted in sovereignty, not subservience. Almost overnight, something extraordinary happened. People didn't just support Traoré, they believed in him. Not because he made grand speeches, but because he didn't speak the language of global elites. He didn't promise reforms in alignment with donor expectations. He talked about fighting insurgency without asking for drones. He talked about feeding people without begging the IMF. He walked through markets in fatigues, not on red carpets. And when he looked into the camera, he didn't say, "We seek partnership." He said, "We seek freedom." And that changed everything. Across Africa, especially among the youth, Traoré's rise triggered something deeper than political support. It tapped into a collective trauma, centuries of colonialism, rigged elections, Western lectures, and leaders who sold their nations for donor checks. In Traoré, they saw something rare, a leader who feared no one. In Lagos, students began quoting his speeches in Pan-African forums. In Bamako, his portrait replaced outdated photos of Macron. In Kinshasa and Johannesburg, young men began calling him the last lion. Even artists joined in, painting murals of Traoré in revolutionary poses, fists raised, surrounded by farmers, mothers, and barefoot children. And it was real. It wasn't CGI. It wasn't propaganda. It was the continent saying, "This is what we've been waiting for." The West, of course, couldn't understand it. How can they love him? They asked. He didn't even run in an election. But they forget something. Elections don't matter when every ballot box is rigged with colonial strings. Africans don't want Western-style democracy. They want dignity, security, and sovereignty. And Traoré gave them the one thing no Western-backed regime ever could: pride. He spoke their truth. He refused to bow. He didn't go to Paris. He stayed home and built gold refineries, housing for the poor, food for the displaced. He partnered with Mali and Niger, not to talk, but to act. Together they formed the alliance of Sahel states AES and quit ECOWAS, which had become little more than France's puppet club. He told French troops to leave. He didn't just talk about Pan-Africanism. He lived it. And when Western headlines mocked him, Africans clapped back, "You've had your puppets. Now we have our lion." But here's the catch. When a leader becomes a symbol, when a symbol becomes a movement, the empire strikes back. Because symbols can't be bribed, they can't be assassinated with a drone, and they terrify those who rule through illusion. So the West changed tactics. They couldn't stop the man, so they attacked his image. They began calling him a hologram, an AI myth, a Russian invention, anything to delegitimize the one thing they fear most, an African who doesn't need them. Which leads us to the next chapter in this war, not one fought with tanks, but with TikToks, fake headlines, and AI-generated lies. Let's expose the digital war machine built to kill Africa's hope before it takes down the revolution. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. When bullets and sanctions fail, the empire switches to something even more dangerous: narrative warfare. And right now, Ibrahim Traore is its prime target. They couldn't stop him on the battlefield. They couldn't starve his nation into submission. So now, they're trying to erase him online, not with truth, but with algorithms. In recent weeks, Western outlets from the Financial Times to Le Monde have published coordinated hit pieces accusing Traoré of running a cult of personality, claiming his popularity is artificial, exaggerated by bots and Russian media. But what they never admit is this: Traoré's popularity doesn't come from Moscow, it comes from Mogadishu, Maputo, and Makurdi. Millions of Africans see themselves in him. That's the part the West can't compute. So they've invented a digital lie to hide a political failure. Their story goes like this: if Africans admire Traoré, it must be fake. If videos of his gold refinery go viral, it must be Russian disinformation. If students in Kenya or Mali chant his name, it must be bots. They'll believe anything, except the truth that Africans are waking up. And so the propaganda machine has gone into overdrive. They've weaponized AI to create confusion. Videos are being leaked online showing futuristic trains or smart cities, only for Western media to later debunk them and say Traoré's revolution is based on lies. It's the oldest colonial tactic in a digital mask. Create a lie, then expose it. And it's not just media manipulation. In digital spaces, we're seeing deliberate flooding of African TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube with misleading narratives about Traoré's government. He hasn't done anything. He's just another dictator. There's no proof he's helping people. Meanwhile, the real footage of homes being built, farmers receiving tools, or soldiers defending borders without foreign troops is shadow banned, suppressed, or flagged as misinformation on Western-controlled platforms. This is not journalism. This is psychological warfare. Their goal is simple: break the connection between Traoré and the people, destroy trust, inject doubt, turn the revolution into a meme, and then kill the meme. But here's what they didn't expect. Africans are digitally literate. They know how to spot propaganda. They know how to read between the lines. And more importantly, they know what real betrayal looks like. It looks like French troops fighting insurgency for a decade while the insurgents got stronger. It looks like the IMF loans built offices, not roads. It looks like presidents in suits nodding politely in Davos while their people starved. Traoré doesn't fit that mold. And that's why the digital attack on him has failed, because you can't Photoshop dignity. So now, the West is getting desperate. They've begun pressuring social media platforms to remove pro-Traoré content. They've started banning Pan-African pages that post his speeches. They call it content moderation. But we know the truth. It's colonial censorship with a Silicon Valley face. And yet, despite all this, he's still trending. Because truth, even whispered, travels faster than their fakes. But here's the danger. While the digital war rages, a real war is being fought in the villages, cities, and borderlands of Burkina Faso. And that war is rarely shown, never reported, and deliberately hidden under headlines about cult leaders and AI propaganda. Let's go to the ground now. Let's see what's happening, not in the cloud, but in the soil. While Western headlines obsess over AI edits and fake bullet trains, they're ignoring the one thing they can't digitally erase: reality. And on the ground in Burkina Faso, reality is fighting back. Here's what they don't want you to see. In a dusty plain just outside Ouagadougou, rows of cement foundations are being laid. This is not a fantasy. It's the start of a 50,000 home development, built not for investors or politicians, but for the poor, the displaced, and the abandoned. No rent, no foreign ownership, no World Bank fingerprints. Just people with nothing, being given something for the first time in decades. How is this possible? Because Traoré cut the middleman. He slashed dependency. He told the IMF and USAID to pack their bags. He redirected internal gold revenues to fund the projects. And instead of hiring expensive foreign contractors, he mobilized local engineers, local workers, and local bricklayers. This is sovereignty in action, not in theory. But you'll never see this on Western news channels. Why? Because it breaks the myth that Africans can't build without help. Because it proves that dignity is not a donation, it's a decision. And that's just one project. In the north, the army, now led by locals, not French command, is retaking villages that had been lost to insurgent groups for years. Yes, the fight is brutal. Yes, the threat is real. But unlike before, this is an African war now, not a foreign experiment. And for the first time, the people know who they're fighting for and who they're fighting against. Western analysts say Traoré has lost control of parts of the country. What they don't say is that those regions were already lost under their watch. The difference now? There's resistance. There's a plan. There's progress. And it's not just military. Burkina Faso is building its gold refinery, a direct slap in the face to France and Switzerland, who for decades controlled Burkina's gold exports, took their cut, and sold it back at inflated prices. But not anymore. The new refinery, processing 400 kilograms of gold per day, is a declaration. Africa will no longer export its wealth raw and import it refined. That one move has shaken the colonial economy to its core. And then there's the food revolution. While Western nations shipped in grain to keep the region begging, Traoré pivoted to local agriculture. He invested in smallholder farmers, empowered cooperatives, and helped launch food programs that feed refugees from their soil, not foreign charity. Burkina Faso is even supplying rice to neighboring African nations through Les Moulins du Sahel, its regional brand. That's what terrifies the West. Not the fake videos, not the slogans, but the fact that it's working. Because for every school reopened, every piece of land restored, Every young person trained in agriculture or engineering, not propaganda, Traoré chips away at the lie they've sold for 60 years. Africa can't stand without them. And so, they scream dictatorship. They cry repression. They say freedom is under threat when the only freedom they're worried about is Africa freeing itself from their grip. Of course, the fight is far from over. The challenges are real. Security remains fragile. Resources are thin. And the Western machine continues to pump lies into the bloodstream of global media. But here's what they can't compute. Despite all the hardship, Burkina Faso people are hopeful again. Not because someone gave them aid, but because someone finally gave them control. And that's why the empire is shaking. Because when the illusion of helplessness dies, Africa rises. But before we close, we must ask one last question. What does Traoré represent, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the future of the continent? Is he a president, a symbol, or something much bigger? The West says Ibrahim Traore is dangerous, but here's the truth they can't hide. He's dangerous only to them. To Africa, he is a reminder of what was stolen and what can still be reclaimed. This is not about one man. It never was. It's about a shift in global power, the end of the era when African presidents were chosen in Paris, when budgets were signed off in Washington, and when development meant dependency. Traoré is the first leader of this new chapter, but he won't be the last. He doesn't wear the mask of diplomacy. He wears dusty boots and talks like a soldier, because that's what this moment demands, not polished speeches at climate summits, but raw leadership in the trenches of economic war, propaganda battles, and neo-colonial aggression. Western media says he's not elected. But when has the West ever respected African elections? They applauded the coups that served them. They supported tyrants who kissed their rings. And they turned a blind eye every time a democratically elected leader looted their people and handed over mining rights to France, the US, or Glencore. Traoré didn't play that game. He took back the gold. He took back the land. He took back the right to define development on African terms. And for that, he is called a threat. They call him a Russian puppet, but he made it clear. Burkina Faso is nobody's puppet, East or West. If he partners with Russia, it's because they respect sovereignty, not because they command it. If he rejects France, it's because they've spent decades pretending to help while bleeding Africa dry. And here's what the empire fears most, that Africa is listening, that Mali is listening, that Niger is already marching in step, that Ghana, Chad, Togo, and even Nigeria are now watching carefully, not through foreign newspapers, but through their people, their youth, their dreams. What Traoré has done is far more powerful than a policy or speech. He's made it clear that we don't need them. Not to tell us what's democratic, not to tell us what's sustainable, not to tell us who our heroes are. For the first time in decades, Africa is not asking the world for help. It's asking it to step aside. And in that silence, a new anthem is rising, one sung in Bambara, Moor, Hausa, and Kiswahili, one that says, "We are the architects now. We are the authors of our freedom, and if you won't let us rise with you, we'll rise without you." Ibrahim Traore may not be perfect, no leader is, but he is ours, and that, above all else, is what terrifies them. Do you think West's criticism is nothing but hate? Or is it fear? Let us know in the comments section. Why do they fear Traoré this much? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about, the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.